Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Imran comes with more than 16 years of experience in the domain of sustainability reporting, assurance, climate change, EHS, environment management system, and ESG. Mr. Imran is Masters in Environmental Science with 16 years of experience in the field. He has also completed his MBA from IIT. He is an associate director at Sustainalytics Morningstar and leads the Sustainable Corporate Solutions team out of Mumbai. He worked as a senior director where he led the ESG research operation out of India, leading a 50-plus research team. Prior RBQ, he worked at MSCI, a leading global ESG rating agency, as a vice president. Environmental, social, and governance rating, he led such teams for assessing ESG risk for large publicity traded companies globally. His experience with leading certification bodies, LRQA, and was primarily towards auditing, which included EHS sustainability and GHG ambient projects. Under the Kyoto Protocol, he validated and verified 100 plus projects under the Clean Development Mechanism of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Imran. He will be speaking on the topic sustainability linked financing for startups and MSME, and will be focusing on the Sustainable Development Goal 8. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Deenal, for the introduction. And, yeah, the one thing which is not in my introduction and which, I would love to say, here in person is that I started my career with EnviroCare Labs, so that's how I started my journey. That was the first firm I worked with, for good 2 years under Dr. Nilesh's guidance, very closely with him. So, I'm really proud to be associated and, very honored to be associated with Enviro, all through, and, especially on the EJ awards, even last year, this year. So, I really thank the EJ team and Dr. Nilesh, for this opportunity. And yeah, so, great, sessions we had, and I'd like to also congratulate all of you who have made it to the, to the final list. And I look forward for the upcoming sessions wherein the awards are also announced. So thanks so much. Yeah, I'll share my slides. I have a small presentation also. Yeah, so I'd, before starting my presentation, I'd also like to thank my colleague Devjit Mukherjee, who works closely with me, for helping me on this particular deck. So yeah, so I'll be speaking more on the sustainable finance, and more specifically on the sustainability linked financing, which is something new relatively as compared to the typical sustainable finance, like green bonds or social bonds and sustainable bonds. But yeah, I'll also discuss at a very high level of what green bonds, social bonds, and sustainability bonds are, and more specifically on the linked bonds as well. Then we'll go to a bit of an introduction on linked financing, how it is different from the green bonds and loans, the traditional ones. What are the advantages of linked financing, and then also see a bit about how it has grown, and also how, a bit on the Indian context, and then more specifically on how these this linked financing can help MSMEs and startups more on the Indian context, because we have a larger Indian audience here. And also some bit of what are the challenges, mitigation measures, what are the opportunities, and some of the key takeaways. So there is a lot on the agenda, but I'll try to do justice to the time we have. And I know, this is the last session before the awards are announced, so thanks so much for your patience. So, at a very high level, what are these green bonds, social bonds, or sustainable bonds? Essentially, it is a debt instrument, but more focused on the environmental impacts, or the social impacts, or the the sustainability related impacts it can create. So that's how we have these terminologies as green bonds, or social bonds, or sustainable bonds. So that's that's what it is all about. And yeah, if you look at the green bond specifically, it's more about, say, renewable energy, energy efficiency, green infrastructure, green buildings and all. Social bonds are debt instruments which are, more focused to you. The use of proceeds are more focused on the social side, be it the healthcare, to do with elderly, to do with education. And sustainable bonds is essentially a mix of both. So, that's the, I hope the graphical representation here, makes it easier for us to understand. More likely, these bonds are also aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and at times, these bonds are also called as SDG bonds. If all of these, the use of proceeds are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, moving on to what are the linked bonds or the linked, instruments. So these are very interesting because in this there is the this particular instruments also have a condition or a requirement wherein the terms of the financing agreements are linked with the predetermined targets. So essentially a loan rate may increase or decrease if the borrower fails to meet the particular target. So that makes it very interesting. And that's how it is different from the traditional green bond or social bond or sustainable bond. So that's a unique feature of SLL and SLBs, and we are seeing an increase in this particular in these products more recently. So if you look at how the whole sustainable debt issuance market is placed, there are some numbers here, some color codes. It's largely, started with green bonds and green loans, and as we see, there is an increase of the sustainability linked loans or the linked bonds more recently, and it's a fast growing market. We have seen more than 732 billion worth of bonds issued in 2020, and it's only growing at an enormous pace. If you look at, like, some of you might be wondering that, how does this really play? What happens in actual, like, what would be such terms of sustainability linked financing? So just to share some of the examples with you. So in 2019, there was an Italian power company called Enel. It's a huge power producer in the European region, and they came up with a sustainability linked bond, wherein the conditions of that bond were that if they fail to produce 55% of their electricity through renewable sources, they will have to pay 25 basis point extra interest on the bond. So so if they're not achieving their predetermined sustainability targets, they have to pay extra interest. So that creates more of an onus, more responsibility on the borrower, right? So another example, in 2020, Schneider, which is a huge, which is into the electrical systems, they issued a bond, and the condition was that the carbon emissions they would save. So if at all they fail to deliver those particular savings, predetermined savings to these customers, they will have to pay a premium to the investors, right? So it's not only to do with green, renewable energy or carbon emissions and all, but it can also be social aspects, which might be, which also are covered in this particular financing. So it can be even to increase staff gender diversity, right? And so and so. So I hope this gives you a good a picture, and you can relate to what the sustainable linked financing is all about, right? Um, so essentially, how they're different from typical, a traditional green bond and green loans is that uh, green bonds or green loans or social bonds, they typically come with a specific use of proceed. So the projects have to be defined while such a green bond or a social bond or a sustainable bond is raised, and once the finances are in place, the borrower has to then put in all that money for those specific use of proceeds which have been defined, right? Now, how this is different, like how an SLF is different from the traditional projects is that, they have to, like, in a sustainability linked loan or a linked finance, it's not about the projects per se, but it's about the targets or the key performance indicators. So, these terminologies, the KPI or the SPTs, you can find in this particular, the linked loans, rather than, yeah, being more of a project based. So it's more of an activity performance based rather than an activity based, to summarize how it is different from a typical green bond or a social bond. What are the advantages of such financing? As I said, is there is a very clear linkage, and there is a higher level of onus on the borrower, to meet their commitments, to meet their targets, and that's what sets this apart from the traditional green bond or social bonds. And of course, sorry. I hear an echo. So yeah, and of course, while defining the key performance indicators and the sustainability, targets, the SPTs, they must be core, material, and relevant to the borrower. Now, uh, you might be thinking of, like, what, how does the framework work? Are there any guidelines? Who all stakeholders are involved in this particular process? So yeah, this is quite, this is quite a mature, uh, you know, framework as of now, as we speak. So there are sustainability linked bond principles. There is sustainability linked loans principles which have been published, especially like ICMA. International Capital Market Association has come up with these, some of these principles. They have laid like guidelines for the borrowers to look at as to how they should identify the KPIs targets, how they should demonstrate their relevance, the materiality, and also there are other stakeholders which are involved in this. For a firm like us, which is, we provide second party opinion, so we do an independent assessment of such frameworks and provide an independent opinion as to how, how best they're aligned with the principles or the guidelines. As just to give you another graph here, to showcase how the SLL issuances have increased, when compared with the typical green loan. So we see that the dark blue bar over here is the sustainability linked loans, and in the recent years we have seen a tremendous increase when compared to the typical green loans, which are more of traditional loans. Now, yeah, there have been, in the previous slides, I made references to some of the international, green sustainability linked bonds which have been issued. Looking into the Indian scenario, more specifically, the first SLB was issued in very recently, so it's just catching up, and that was Ultratech, which registered its or raised its first sustainability linked bond in India. And again, the targets are, there are some targets which are more linked with the carbon emissions, which is again very relevant material for a company which is involved in cement production. And we have been seeing an increase in SLBs in the Indian context as well. Now, because I was asked to more specifically focus on the startup or the MSMEs. So we all know that the startup India is picking up. The numbers say it all, that there is so much of an attention, or there is so much of growth happening in this particular space in India. And what is it for startups and MSMEs in India? Like, how can they benefit out of this particular sustainable finance linked loans and the sustainable finance scheme? So there is already some action happened. There is already some support system or guidelines or a framework which is set up by the government of India as well. Yeah, if you look at the Startup India website, there is a full page on the sustainable finance scheme and who can be eligible, how can you seek benefit out of this scheme. And it talks about, like all of these things. So there is a scheme overview. It's more about creating a value chain of energy efficiency, cleaner production, and there is also eligible projects or criteria which is provided in this particular under the scheme. It can be, it's the focus is more on renewable energy, energy efficiency, waste management, and also allied equipments or manufacturers in this particular space. And to promote this particular scheme, there are a lot of fiscal initiatives which have been provided. uh, it can be to help on the working capital, to help on the capex as well. So yeah, so there is a lot of there is already a finance scheme more targeted towards the startups in India. And apart from that, there is also support for MSMEs. From typically these are from banks, corporations. There are these existing funds already, be it the climate fund, the green bonds, social bonds, microfinance, and all. And yeah, and again, like typically, like the action what we are seeing in this particular space has been more on the again on the green infrastructure, be it renewable, be it the electric vehicles, the renewable energy, waste management, and at a very high level, these are all, if you look at the type of projects or the eligibility criteria in the previous slides, it's all aimed at to achieve the India's net zero emissions target by 2070, right? So that's how the alignment is as of now. And we do need lots of finance to be able to achieve our net zero emissions target in by 2070. And RBI has also been supporting these projects under the priority sector lending. So so there is a lot happening on the for the MSMEs also in India. uh, while this is very interesting, right? But there are also some challenges which are, which one may face in this particular scheme of things. So one of the key challenges may be greenwashing. So greenwashing is essentially, wherein a corporation publicly markets that they are leading sustainability practices, but then in real, they are doing little, or it's more like a nice fancy report being published with a lot of good pictures, photographs, and all. But yeah, in essence, in actual on the ground, there is less work which is being done. So although SLLs, because they are linked with predefined indicators, targets, there is already a lot being done to eliminate, avoid greenwashing. But then the lenders still have to be very careful as to how, what are the targets which have been set, whether they are relevant, they are core, they are material, whether it is achievable, or is it overly or insufficiently ambitious. So I think those are the key considerations here when we look at some of the challenges in this particular space. Again, like on the mitigation measures, it's essentially to avoid greenwashing. It is to we should ensure that the selected KPIs are appropriately identified. And so that's where essentially the greenwashing bit can be mitigated. And yeah, so I think, yeah, what the past research has shown that companies who strive for ambitious ESG goals are generally better managed, and hence they are having less risky propositions. And yeah, so I think these are more of like the mitigation measures here. Although as compared to the typical green bonds, social bonds, or sustainable bonds, I think SLLs already do much more as far as the green washing is concerned. So they're better in terms of avoiding the greenwashing bit. There are plenty of opportunities when it comes to sustainability linked financing. There is a lot of standardization in the taxonomies also, like as to what which are the projects or which are the initiatives which can be considered as green, or or can be considered as positive as far as the social impacts are concerned, right? And and largely as of now, I think more of the SLF are being used in more targeted towards energy efficiency, emission reductions, resource management, waste management, and biodiversity. Social KPIs include more on the equal opportunities, training, healthcare, labor conditions, and all. And one of the key, like as I mentioned earlier, like there are some key stakeholders who are involved in this particular process. So while there are, corporations or even a municipality or a government, who raises who uses sustainable finance instruments to raise money. There are also stakeholders who are involved in setting up the principles or the guidelines, like ICMA. And then there are other stakeholders who are involved in independently verifying and kind of opining on these frameworks, which also add to further credibility, for the investor community to invest in such schemes. So finally, like some of the it's very clear that we are seeing a tremendous growth in sustainable financing, and more so in the sustainability linked loan financing. And yeah, there are there are certain areas wherein we have to be we have to avoid, or we have to also be aware of the elements of greenwashing. But there is already a lot of work happening in the space of standardization, be it the principles, be it the methodologies, be it the key stakeholders who are involved. Recently, like, yeah, and there is a lot of stakeholder attention. So many of these independent second party opinions, or all of the frameworks and all are to be publicly available. So the public at large is also aware, or is party to what is happening. And there have been some cases of criticism also as well in the recent past for certain players who have who have availed sustainable finance, certain players who are typically into the fossil fuel domain, and so those are the areas which have been seeking some stakeholder attention, but largely this space is really picking up, essentially, more importantly, when the world needs more finance to be pumped in, on sustainable projects, and that's how we have been seeing tremendous growth in this particular space. So yeah, I have some, I've yeah, some of the references over here, but yeah, essentially that's this is something which I wanted to share, and I hope this was helpful for you to understand as to what is happening in the sustainable finance space, and more so in the linked finance space. And I'll be happy to take any questions here, or maybe you can direct your questions to Deenal at the end, and maybe Deenal can help me with the questions at a later stage. And yeah, thank you so much.